Welcome, faculty. In this short tutorial, we'll be guiding you through how to set up exam accommodations for your students in Smarter Proctoring. The topics we're going to discuss are how to access Smarter Proctoring in Ivy Learn, how to find your students and add their accommodations, and then discuss key timelines. So when do the accommodations need to be added, and key actions that you need to take to make sure the proctors know about the accommodations your students will need. We know you want to make sure all your students are supported, and we're here to help make that process easier. So let's get started. First, you're going to log into My Ivy and find the course where you need to make the accommodation. Once in, you're going to find the Smarter Proctoring link in the course navigation menu on the left-hand side of the screen. Click on that to go to the Smarter Proctoring course dashboard, which is your go-to spot for managing exams, reviewing student details, and most importantly, for our purposes today, setting up accommodations for your students. You're going to find the quiz or exam that you want to make the accommodation in and scroll down until you see this View Exam button in the bottom right-hand corner. Clicking on that will take you to the detail page for this particular exam. You're going to scroll down till you see the student overview section, which will have your students listed, and then you're going to find the student that needs the exam. Today, we're going to make accommodations for Greg Brady. To make those accommodations, you're going to come over here to the Select Action drop-down menu, and you're going to click on Add Accommodation. When you click on this, it's going to take you through the menu that looks very similar to the exam setup that you went through to connect your exam with Smarter Proctoring. So essentially, you're going to go through 4 different pages of changes that you can make, which are similar to the changes that you made when you set things up in the first place. The first page is the exam details, so the name, duration, password, consecutive attempts, and the dates and scheduling window. For Greg's case, he is allowed time and a half, and he is also given an additional attempt. So in order to make sure he gets those accommodations, we're going to come up here to the duration and change the 1 hour that the exam is set for to 1 hour and 30 minutes. It turned yellow when I made that change to show that an edit has been made in that particular area. In order to add an additional attempt, I'm going to come down here to consecutive attempts allowed and select 2. If I needed to change the date settings for that particular student or the scheduling window, I could do that here as well. Once I've made all my changes on this page, I'll come down to the bottom and click on Continue. The next page are the permitted items, so what items students are allowed to use during the exam. You may have already allowed students to use some items, so there may already be things checked. In this particular case, students are not allowed to use anything, but Greg has an accommodation where he is allowed to use notes and wear headphones. So we're going to come over here and toggle notes to on. If we wanted, and there's additional information that we need to add about the notes, so for example, if he's only allowed to use a 3x5 card, or if he's allowed to use a single sheet of 8x11 paper, or if he's allowed to use as many notes as he wants, we would add this information right here. It's really important that you add this information in this box so the proctors know exactly what the students are allowed to use, and there are no questions while the student's in the exam. The other thing that Greg is allowed to have, like I said before, is headphones. But headphones are not on the list that Smart Proctoring is providing. So when I come down here to the bottom where it says Other Items, I would type in headphones, and then any other specific information the proctor would need to know about using that item during the exam. Once I've got everything added, I'm going to come over here, click on Continue, and go to the next page. This next page is where I can add notes for both the student and the proctor. So up here, I may remind them about their accommodations. So time and a half, allowed to use notes, have headphones, and the additional attempt. And then I would probably type a similar note for the proctor. I may be more detailed, so again, if there are any specifics about the notes or specifics about some of the accommodations that the proctor needs to be aware of, this is where you would put it. And again, it's very important that the proctor has all the information they need to make sure that they are accommodating the student correctly. On the next page, things about the proctor settings are going to come up. Depending on which proctor type the student is going to use, you may not need to do anything here. If they're doing it in the testing center, nothing you need to do at all. If they opt for a virtual proctoring session, there may be some of these custom settings that you will need to change in order to accommodate them. So for example, if the standard setting is that they're only forced to use one screen, but the student has an accommodation to use an external monitor, then you can click on this to unselect it so that that student would be able to use the external monitor during their exam. Once you've done setting all of the proctor settings, make sure that the accommodations are made, you hit continue, and now you are on the last page, the confirmation page. Go through these settings, make sure everything looks correct. So time and a half, additional attempt, they're allowed notes and headphones. You've got the notes for the proctor and the student. If I'm happy with this, I'm going to go in here, hit confirm, and then it should take me back to my exam settings for the particular exam. I can scroll back down here to the student overview and see that Greg now has an accommodation. If something changes or you forgot to add something, you can come over here to the select action menu and come down here to edit the accommodation and make any changes there. One thing that's really important about setting up accommodations in Smarter Proctoring is this has to be done before the student schedules. It's best practice to put any accommodations into Smarter Proctoring as soon as you set up the exam. That way, you're sure to have them in before students begin to schedule their exams. If a student happens to schedule before you can enter their accommodations, you'll need to reach out to the student and have them cancel their appointment. Once you have successfully added the necessary accommodations, let the student know so they can reschedule their testing session. Another element to make sure that you've taken care of as well is that the accommodations need to be made in Smarter Proctoring and in the original quiz, whether it be set up in Ivy Learn, Pearson, McGraw-Hill, or any other third-party vendor. So make sure that any accommodations that are put in Smarter Proctoring are also set up for the student in the original exam. Here are some final tips about making accommodations in Smarter Proctoring. It's a good idea to enter accommodations before the exam scheduling window opens. This gives students the smoothest experience possible. And remember, always list all approved accommodations for each student. If there's anything missing from the available options, include it in the Notes to Proctor section, so there's no question about what the student has available to them during the exam. If you need more details or a step-by-step guide, check out the Setting Up an Accommodation section of the Proctored Exams for Faculty KB article on My Ivy by scanning this QR code. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for ensuring that your students receive the accommodations they need. Have a great day!